episode 22 of the Dead Drop Podcast. I am your host, Jon F. Merz. Welcome. A lot to get to today. So, where do I start? If you're friends with me on Facebook, you probably already know the news. But, how do I start this off? I don't know. Well, we talked about it last week a little bit. And then some stuff has happened, and I'm pretty stoked about it. First and foremost, I spent the day yesterday down on Cape Cod at the beach celebrating my lovely wife and her 50th birthday. So happy birthday, Joyce. And we were having lunch when I got the email that I booked the feature film audition that I talked about last week. So I'm totally stoked. This is my first feature film role. It is a speaking role. It's a small one. It's not like you're not going to see my name, on the movie poster or anything like that. And hopefully it doesn't end up on the cutting room floor, but who knows? It's also my first SAG job, the Screen Actors Guild, for the union. So that'll be sort of an interesting process, and we'll get into that as I explain more about what's going on. But so this is I can't give away too many details yet, just because productions are notoriously, close guarded secrets and this, that, and the other thing. I can tell you it is a science fiction movie, and it is from a major studio that is going to be filming around the Massachusetts area starting in September, and right now I am scheduled for 1 day on set in November, so I have some time yet before my shoot date arrives. But I'm pretty stoked about the whole thing, to be completely honest with you. It was actually 6 years ago yesterday, on my wife Joyce's birthday 6 years ago, in 2014, that I got a text from a friend of mine whose friend was a stylist, and she needed a fit guy in his 40s for a fitness photo shoot, and was I interested in doing it? And I said sure. I'm always looking for new experiences, and so I went and I did this fitness photo shoot, which is basically me doing box jumps and dumbbell exercises and some push-ups and stuff like that in workout gear. And by the end of that shoot, the photographer who was taking all the pictures, he said to me, you really ought to think about getting representation. And I kind of laughed the whole thing off, because it was like, dude, I just did this on a lark. I don't need the ego stroke, and thank you, but this really isn't what I do. I write books for a living, this, that, and the other. And he said, no, I'm really being serious. He said, you look good on camera. You got a good vibe about you, and you should really think about it. So I went home and talked things over with Joyce, and decided I have obviously other friends who are in the modeling and the acting community here locally, and I asked a couple of them what they thought I should do, and the overall recommendation was to reach out to an agency called Maggie, because it's sort of it's pretty much the best agency in Boston. So I went on their website, and they had a whole method for sort of submitting yourself and seeing if they were interested in representing you. I had to take some pictures. I had to send some pictures in. And within 2 weeks of that, I went in. I met with Robert Casey, who runs the agency, and he said, we'll bring you on board. And it's been kind of crazy ever since then, to be honest with you. I've done commercials, I've done print work, I did the mini-series, The Cars That Made America, and 6 years to the day that I did this first photo shoot, I get cast in a feature film. So it's a really important waypoint in my acting career, so to speak, if you want to call it that. And it was a pretty cool email to get. We were at a clam shack in Orleans on Cape Cod, and I had just gone to the bathroom and come back, and I was waiting for the food to get there, and opened up my phone, looked down, and there's the email from the casting people, and it said something to the effect of, the movie would like to offer you the role of. And it was pretty cool. I'm not gonna lie. I threw my hands up in the air. I was pumped because I don't know. It's a great feeling. So in last week's episode, I talked a little bit about how I had gotten notes from the director about what he wanted to see from me in terms of me giving my lines, but being slightly preoccupied by something else. So sort of, like, yeah, but I'm really concentrating on this over there. So that's what I did, and that's what I gave him. Funny that I auditioned for 2 roles, and the first role I thought was a better fit for me because it was a military guy, and I thought that would be an easier thing for me to carry on. But I ended up getting the second role, so thrilled, absolutely thrilled. I just looking forward to seeing more of the script and seeing if I have more lines than what I saw on the sides that I used for the audition. But either way, it's pretty freaking cool. I'm still kind of over the moon about all of this, and I'm just trying to bring up, because this is my first SAG job. I wanted to kind of go through what happens here. Yeah, here it is. So basically, since this is my first SAG job, usually when you get attached to a SAG production, you have to give them your union number and all that other stuff. But it takes a number of credits working on SAG projects before you're eligible to join the union. So, according to my agent, there's nothing to do. This will count as your first SAG job, which will make you SAG eligible. You will be able to book one more SAG role before you become a must join, at which point you'd have to join before booking another SAG role. We can cross that bridge and discuss further down the line when it comes up. So basically, I'm good. I can just, basically go into this as a non-union guy, and this will count as a credit towards me eventually joining the union. Still don't know. I mean, I could do one more SAG role, and then it would be a must join. The only issue I have with it right now is that there's not necessarily a ton of SAG work around here. Most of it is non-union. Most of the commercials are non-union. The Cars That Made America was actually a non-union project, which really surprised me. I would have thought it was a SAG project, but it wasn't. It was non-union. In other places like New York and LA, or even Atlanta now, because Atlanta is such a huge production hub, most of the projects are all union. So I don't know if it makes sense for me to join the union so quickly, because then I would only be allowed to work SAG projects that come into town, and I wouldn't be eligible for non-union commercials, non-union print work, or any of that stuff. So it's kind of a tricky sort of minefield to have to navigate. But like my agent said, it's we'll navigate that bridge when we come to it. So for the time being, I'm over the moon. I can't even explain it. It's kind of like getting the first time I got the email from my first agent, or the phone call I got from her when she sold the Fixer and the Invoker to Kensington. It's along those lines. It's a pretty great feeling, especially since this is an area that I fell into and never really sort of thought it would go anywhere. So who knows? It may still go nowhere. I don't know. I'll take it and ride it for as long as I can, and just enjoy the hell out of it while it's going on. So like I said, so it is a small role. There are lines. I have some cool lines to say, and I'll be on set for about a day. So that was a nice thing. Since this is a SAG project, the pay is a lot better than a non-union project. I'll say that. So thank the union for establishing some bare day minimums, so to speak. So I get a guaranteed day rate for working on set for a day, and it's it's nice. It's very nice. And yeah, so I don't know if they're gonna update the IMDb page pretty soon, because I think between yesterday and the end of this week they're gonna probably make their final casting decisions for the other roles that they have that they were casting in this area. So I'm keeping an eye on the IMDb page. I'm sorry I can't tell you the title of the movie yet, just because it's still sort of under wraps. As soon as I can, I will. But it'll be kind of cool to see my name under another film production out on IMDb. I'm listed under the Cars That Made America out there right now, but this will be nice to be sort of the first feature film credit for me for that. And yeah, that's really it for kicking off the acting thing. I just did another submission audition package. No lines, just some photos that I had to send off last minute today, and yeah, that's it from the acting thing. But it's big news, and I'm happy about it. So let's take a quick break, and we'll get back into it. So POUNDCAKE news. What are we doing over on POUNDCAKE? Well, we had a really productive weekend last weekend. We actually went out and did some filming for a new show called The Tale, which is, how are we positioning this? It's sort of like a Midnight Run-esque kind of show. So I play a character named Mickler, and Chris is actually playing sort of this deadbeat that I have to sort of bring back because he's skipped town on a bail bondsman kind of scenario. So we went out, we actually shot episode 1. And hopefully we will be done editing that, over the next couple of weeks or so, and we'll be doing some more filming on that front as well. So once that is all set, we'll be probably putting it up on the YouTube channel page, youtube.com/POUNDCAKE Media, where you can see everything that we're working on, and yeah, we'll be going from there. We also did a marathon recording session last weekend of both Cocktails and Screams and After Hours. So Cocktails and Screams, the most recent episode, episode 8, we talked about Mandy, which was a 2018 movie by Panos Cosmatos starring Nick Cage. And it's something. I had a great time watching it. If you have not seen this movie yet, definitely, well, first check out episode 8 of Cocktails and Screams, because you should. And Chris and I get into a good conversation about it. But then you should check out the movie as well, because it's a ton of fun. Episode 9 that is coming out 5 days from now on Monday. That will be about the Brotherhood of the Wolf, which was a French movie back in 2002 with Marc Dacascos and just an all-star cast from French cinema. The problem with that one that we found was that there is no place right now where you can actually watch it. You can't stream it anywhere. So if you have the DVD like Chris and I do, it's definitely worth a watch. I think it's out on Blu-ray now as well. So it's short money, but it's worth it. It's a fantastic movie. And episode 10, we are going to be talking about The Headhunter, which is another foreign movie that came out within the last year or two, supposedly made for just $30,000. I've seen this movie already. I really enjoyed it, and I love the fact that these guys were able to make something like this on 30 grand only, because it's pretty amazing stuff. So we'll be talking about that. I think we're going to be recording that episode this coming Saturday, so we'll be talking about that. And then, of course, we've got our After Hours episodes, which just sort of wind all over the place and go from one obscure topic to the other. Although we did spend a lot of time last weekend talking about acting and directing and producing, so some of those episodes will probably be pretty interesting to watch, especially as we have a few more drinks and talk about various experiences. Chris comes at it. Chris is an actor, but he comes at it more as a producer and director, and I sort of come at it as a writer and an actor. So it's an interesting blend of our two viewpoints, I think. So After Hours releases every Friday. So the After Hours from episode 8 will be released the day after tomorrow. This podcast will be released tomorrow on Thursday, the 10th of September. So I record these on Wednesday evenings. It's a lovely evening outside right now, and I have not had dinner yet. I also haven't shaved because I'm a scruffy bum today. So, but yeah, so that's sort of where we're at on the whole Pound Cake production side of things. I had a great time filming the tale. It's definitely a fun character. Chris has written up some great episodes. I'm looking forward to seeing that get fully edited and out to you guys. I've posted on my Instagram account a quick screen grab from the filming on Saturday, but look for that to be refined as we move forward and ahead. And yeah, so what's coming up next? We have an excerpt from the I think I talked about it last week. One of the things that I'd written during the quarantine was a sort of a Dungeons and Dragons-esque type short story, and I'm hoping to turn this into just a series of short stories. They'll be longer short stories, but I'm gonna give you guys a preview of that. Again, first draft mode has not been edited yet, so we'll see how it goes. We'll see if any typos pop up in my stream of consciousness reading. So I'll be back in just a second. All right, so I literally just started to record again and started reading the very first line of the short story I'm about to read for you guys, and had to stop myself because I wasn't sure that I had written it correctly because it wasn't making any sense to me. But on a second and third read, it actually does. So without further ado, here we go. This is called A Favor for the Dead. The tavern, set amongst the rows of houses and shops in this tiny village, would not seem the sort of place one might find such a character, for it was neither exotic nor situated near anything of particular importance, merely a village of survivors sprung up amid the mountain forests of pine and cedar, nestled close to a vibrant stream that they had rerouted to run the grist mill and water the small fields that grew corn and barley. Indeed, the ale made from the barley might have been the one thing of prominence if anyone had seen fit to ever inquire about the village itself, for there was little else to spark the interest of a caravan, let alone someone as foreboding as the current occupant of the last table by the window in the back. He wore long hair, but it was hard to tell if it was blonde or gray, for it could have easily passed as both, given the amount of sunlight that streamed through the tavern's small panes. His garments were all the colors of the night spectrum, a motley assortment of grays and blacks and crimsons and navies, all muted and blended together beneath the voluminous traveling cloak that he wrapped about himself as he sat waiting for his meal. There were blades strapped about him on nearly every part of his body, thin stilettos, hunting knives, throwing knives, and a sword shorter than most but no less deadly and longer than every other blade he wore. Presumably there were other weapons concealed on his person, but no one wanted to get close enough to find out where and what they were. He seemed to prefer it that way. When he'd arrived at the tavern, there had been no indication. Normally, a traveler to the village would have prompted the tongues of gossips to start wagging, but his approach had gone unnoticed until the moment he stood in the doorway and asked about food and drink. Only then was anyone in the village even aware of his presence. Such a thing only added to the mystique of him, but he showed no signs of caring about such a trivial matter, only the aforementioned food and drink. Nevertheless, word soon spread of the stranger eating and drinking at the tavern, and a few of the more curious decided to cut the afternoon work short in favor of repairing to the tavern and seeing for themselves what all the fuss was about. "Half-elf he is, aye," said the tavern keeper, a stout man of 60 with a bushy white beard and a belly that loved the village's ale. Saw the ears poking out of those locks, I did. There's a fine point on 'em, too. Why come here? Asked another man. There's no rhyme or reason to it. And he just showed up. No one even saw him coming. Probably up to no good he is. Maybe a spellcaster of some sort. Already bewitched us all into not seeing him on the main road as he arrived. You're going to be the one to accuse him of magical mischief then, Robbie. Colleen, the farmer, chuckled to himself as he sipped from his tankard. Because if you are, I surely like to be witness to it. He paused and then chuckled again. And what will surely be your untimely demise shortly thereafter? Ain't no magic user, said Jarek, the final man near the bar. He shook his head and his eyes narrowed as he threw a furtive glance at the stranger in the corner. All those blades, you see 'em? Ain't no magic user ever I seen had so many blades about him as that one there. Nah, would that he were a spell weaver, for this one, mark my words, is an assassin. Robbie shook his head. Ridiculous, what would an assassin be in town for? Jack grunted. Robbie, you ain't never been beyond the White Hills enough to even be commenting. Don't matter the reason, all that matters is he's here. And with that, the men fell into an even more hushed conversation, lest the stranger in the corner overhear them. But for their ignorance, they would never know the truth, that Valus the Wanderer, the man they now spoke about, had indeed heard every word they had said about him, and even now, as they whispered and mumbled, the words were just as clear to his ears. It was not unexpected, he thought, this level of scrutiny. Had he wished it so, he could have easily made himself apparent as he decided to divert from his route in favor of seeing this tiny village. But throughout his years he had learned that the less notice of his arrival in any town or city or kingdom, the better his odds of survival. People were naturally suspicious of those they marked as assassins, and Valus couldn't say it was unjustified. When an assassin came to town, no one knew who their intended victim might be. Most of the time, though, it was no one. Valus never showed himself in a town where he had been hired, at least not until the target was already dead. There was no sense in giving anyone advanced warning of his arrival. Valus would sneak in during the night, do his business, and generally be gone before the first streaks of sunlight broke the horizon and wakened the cocks. In his wake, the only trace of his presence would be the drying blood of his mark. In this way, he avoided the sort of interest he was being subjected to right now. He also avoided the inevitable quest for vengeance that many of the friends of his victims would no doubt like to exact, given half a chance to do so. Valus simply removed himself from being anywhere nearby, and once he was out of the area itself, he could vanish amid the rocks and trees better than any ranger that stalked them. But for his own curiosity had he come to this village, no more, no less. Valus wandered, hence his name, and he sought out small places like this for a mere chance to rest and replenish his soul. The food, he had often found, was of better quality in small towns where they still took pride in such things, as a hearty meal than it was in bigger cities in places that charged 3 times as much for much worse fare. And the ale in this town was of superior quality, such that Valus enjoyed a tankard or two, even before the tavern keeper set down the bowl of beef stew, and then stepped back as if anxious to put distance between himself and the stranger. Anything else, sir? Valus regarded him for a moment and then grinned. Not yet, but I'll let you know if the meal satisfies me or not. Pray that it does. The tavern keeper bowed once, twice, and then nodded his head. Of course, sir. Of course, I'm sure it will. My daughter makes it by the scratch every day. Tasty it is. Valus ignored him and lifted the spoon to his lips, blowing just once before plopping the hearty mixture into his mouth. He chewed slowly, noting that the beef was exceptionally tender, and the vegetables that had been added complemented it well. Even the potatoes were soft and flavored with hints of garlic and onion. All in all, a savory meal, thought Valus. He was through a second bowl of the stuff, and the evening shadows had lengthened, drawing down from the mountains that surrounded the village like ominous specters searching for a meal, when the door to the tavern burst open, and a second stranger stood in the doorway. A gust blew in and extinguished several of the candles that had been lit. The tavern keeper looked annoyed and barked at the new arrival. Hurry up, man! Don't stand there letting in all the wind. We'll be blind as bats if you do. The new arrival said nothing, but stepped further in and closed the door behind him. as the tavern keeper's daughter, a pretty thing of 16 with blue eyes and blonde hair done up in a bun, raced about relighting the candles that had been blown out, she sparked a match and held it to the wick, catching sight of the new arrival with a loud gasp. The new arrival ignored her obvious fear and instead strode directly toward the back of the tavern where Vallis sat, still engrossed in his stew and ale. But as the stranger approached, Vallis looked up, an expression of curiosity on his face that soon changed to a more serious demeanor as he got a look at the man's face that stood before him. "You are Vallis the Wanderer," said the man by greeting. Vallis was unused to being so easily identified and leaned back in his seat. "Who knows me by that name?" "May I sit?" Vallis shrugged. "You seem intent on announcing me to all who would hear, so yes, sit. Sit and talk in a tone less suited to being overheard by those with no business hearing mine." The man sat, and Vallis appraised him better, given the candles on the table that shed more light upon his countenance. He was gaunt, like skin stretched across rocks until nearly split. One could see every nook and cranny of the man's skull, that is, the parts not covered by scraggly facial hair that seemed to sprout from every unusual pore available, whether the nostrils, the ears, or even between his eyebrows. The clothes he wore were ragged and threadbare. The cloak he had thrown about his shoulders seemed to envelop his frail body, and when he rested his hands upon the table, they were topped with slender fingers and long nails caked with filth. In fact, all of these things taken into consideration, it was but the man's eyes that still held a gleam of fire. All else had given way to some malady that had whittled the man's essence away until only the near skeleton that Vallis beheld now still remained. "I am near death," said the old one, "but once I was known as Almanor." "The name means nothing to me," said Vallis. "You live in these parts?" "Beyond the White Hills, 2 days' journey at least. My village there lay in the shadow of a mage's tower." Vallis frowned and drank some more ale. "What of it?" "We once enjoyed a good life there. The mage was kind and generous. With his help, we enjoyed many seasons of happiness, bountiful harvests, and more. All was well." Almanor bent his head, and then something happened. The mage changed. "Changed? In what manner?" "No longer did he come and visit the town. No longer did we see him outside. He stayed within the tower, and from that moment on a creeping sickness spread slowly ever outward from it, and infected all living things. The trees that lined the path to his tower were the first to die. Great majestic things, hundreds of years old, that simply withered and cracked and toppled to the ground. The crops we planted in fields that had once yielded such bounty died where they were planted. No harvests came, and the animals that lived in the glens nearby soon fell prey to this creeping sickness as well. We found their bodies when we would hunt, but never could we find the source of their death. It was as if some energy had simply oozed out of the tower and crept along the once hallowed grounds that we called home." Vallis gestured to the tavern keeper for 2 tankards and waited until he had set one before Almanor. The old man drank, if only to quench his thirst so he might continue his tale. All right, so that was an excerpt from A Favor for the Dead, starring Vallis the Wanderer. I'm still not married to the name. The name may change. I have to be honest with you. I've gone through a number of iterations of the name since I started writing this several months back. I'm not sure where I'm at on it. He's a half-elf. He's an assassin. He's also a drow, for those of you who are into Dungeons & Dragons. And like I said, I hadn't played Dungeons & Dragons in 3.5 decades. And then my good buddy Mike Morano invited me to sit in on a game and play a character, and this was the character I came up with, and I'm having a blast with him. So we finished the first adventure in that, and hopefully I'll bring him back for the next time. But in the meantime, I am writing these short stories. So I had, what was another name that I had? I had Wildfear, which I still kind of like. I had Vallis. I had some weird name that began with an X, but that just got ridiculous. There's just no way I'm gonna make people try to read one of my stories and then have to go, what's the name? It's just writing tip. Make sure that people can pronounce the names of your characters. Otherwise, they might get frustrated and just close the book. You know what I mean? So anyway, that is an excerpt from Favor for the Dead. All of these things that I have written over the course of the pandemic are going into edit mode. So sooner than later, they will be available, and I'm excited. I really want to try to find a cool cover art for this series, this sort of D&D-ish series, because I think it definitely deserves something really cool. So I'm on the lookout for really cool artists who would be willing to work with me on this. So if you know anybody, drop me a line, drop a comment below on the video, or and we'll go from there. So that is about it for this episode of Dead Drop. Hard to believe we're already blown through episode 22, but there it is. Just lots of cool news this week. I mean, between the acting thing, the filming thing for POUNDCAKE, and even just reading this story right now got me all excited again. So I want to get back into the writing aspect of stuff and just keep cranking out great stuff for you folks to read. So as always, please go out to the YouTube channel, youtube.com/POUNDCAKE Media. Be sure to subscribe. Check out this podcast and others that we have. If you're listening to this on iTunes or Spotify or Anchor or anywhere else that you can get podcasts, please be sure to check out the actual video image. Put a face to the voice, so to speak. I enjoy doing these things, and I'm having a blast doing the video version of them as well. It's a lot of fun, and it's nice to be back doing this again. As I said, I took a hiatus from the podcast in December of 2019, so this is the third one since I've been back, and I am just psyched to be back talking to everybody every week. It's kind of fun. And as always, things are broken up into the three main areas of my life: the acting, the writing, and the producing. And we'll keep doing it. So if you have any questions or anything like that, please be sure to reach out. Email is jonfmerz@gmail.com, or you can leave a comment. Shout out to Laura, who left me a nice comment last week on the previous episode saying she really liked the new video format. I really appreciate that. Thank you so much. And stay in touch with me. I always love hearing from you folks, and we will do this all again next week. So for Dead Drop, I am Jon F. Merz. You all have a great week and a great weekend, and be good to each other. Talk to you soon.